Welcome back. We have got some fun things we're going to talk to you about. Chris, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, it's I've been pretty busy. Work is picking up, which is a good thing. And yeah. So overall, I can't complain. I'm pretty happy. So
Now, we got a fun topic for today, man.
yeah,
We got a fun one for you guys to
yeah,
listen to. Hard to Kill, and not that was a Van Damme movie, right? Wasn't there a
probably.
Jean-Claude Van Damme movie that was
Yeah, yeah,
hard to Kill? I got to look at that real quick. Hold on.
yeah. I think it was
Hard to
though.
Kill. Oh no, it was a Seagal movie.
Even better. Yeah.
Even right, it was a Seagal movie. The summary: Detective Mason wakes up from a 7-year coma after being left for dead. Now he's on a plot. He's on a quest for vengeance.
Right.
That was the golden days of Steven Seagal back then, before he was an MMA coach and all the fun things that he's done now.
Aikido black belt. Yeah.
But Hard to Kill, man. You had mentioned this in our first interview, like that it was one of your goals. How do you define being hard to kill? What does that mean to you?
So it started when I was in the military, and that it has a different meaning there than it does like in the civilian sector. So what it means to me now, though, is ultimately I want to be in a position where my body is healthy enough and physically strong enough to withstand chaos and disease, but there's more to it. The hard to kill part is also about like actually knowing how to defend yourself in situations, whether that's against assailants or just life in general. Having medical training or some kind of basic first aid helps when chaos shows up, I think. Now, when I was in the military, though, it was different. It was like becoming incredibly proficient in your tactics and your in how you handle your weapon and move as a team. That makes you hard to kill because you're trying to move with purpose and engage the enemy and destroy them as fast as possible so you can get all your guys home, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. I think in having similar but different definitions in the two sectors is really interesting as well, because there's this great page, what was it, Nature is Metal, that I follow on Instagram. You know that one?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
It's wild. Like, it's animals. It literally, when I first stumbled across it, I was like, this is grotesque. This is over the top. But then I slowed down and started paying attention to some of what the guy was writing. And essentially it was a almost like a meditation of sorts on the toughness of the world. And there was one photo of and like he even comments, like it was a picture of an antelope or some type of grazing animal that had had a run in with either I think it was might have been a crocodile or a lion, and they gutted it, and part of its innards were hanging out, and this animal was still turning and fending off hyenas. It's been eviscerated, and this animal's still going. And the idea of being hard to kill, of like even going down, when you are, dealing with challenges, or dealing with a situation, like not taking something laying down. I remember, and also, and that's the one side. So I think like being hard to kill is like one idea could be like an idea of resilience, whatever life's tossing at you, you can bounce back up from. But there's also the quite literal side of defending yourself, and being a very real thing. I remember one night I walked into my house and it was 2 a.m. and I was living in Southeast Asia, and I turn around and someone pops out of the corner of the room with a knife. And I was just like, whoa, and in those settings, like I had trained martial arts, but nothing that you train, like you're training and all right, you're going to come at me with a plastic knife. Let's do this. And it nothing that I studied prepared me for that moment. And luckily, I kind of got in the guy's face and just started shouting, "Get out of my house!" And I must have been big and loud enough that he was like, I'm out. He bolted. And I
Yeah.
was just like,
Yeah.
and I sat there and I closed the door afterwards, and I was like, oh my God, that was probably the dumbest thing I've done. But I was like ridiculously lucky in that moment that
Yeah.
I got lucky. And it was like one of those moments where I sat there and thought, well, I really need to take some more precautions. And, the first thing I did was lit that room better so that when I
Yeah.
came in
Yeah.
at night, I could see everyone to every last corner. That was something that I was like, this room needs to be better lit.
Mm-hmm.
And then starting to pay more attention to my surroundings. Now every night before I go to bed, I do a door check. I walk
Yeah.
up and down my
Yep.
house, do a door check. I check for fire. I check for anything that might be left on that could be a fire hazard. I check for people that are looking and scoping out my house outside. Tonight we had someone
Right.
like that used to be a former employee for my in-laws that they ran a hotel out of our location, and they closed that down. But there was a guy that used to work for them that was outside, and he was just scoping out the house and just kept kind of it sat there for a couple hours. And in that moment we were like, okay, so we locked, double checked every window, double checked every door. And the guy was a little bit shady. He had some
Yeah.
issues,
Yeah.
and then we double locked the padlock. But it was part of that situational awareness of being like, this could
Yeah.
develop. So there's a lot of
Right.
interesting aspects to this whole topic.
For sure. For sure. And you bring up some interesting points because the nature is metal page that,
Right.
if you think about it, that was part of our history not too long ago. As humans, we
Right.
were just animals on the savannah, trying to survive. Big cats from eating us, and so and
Mm-hmm.
so. But you also touched on another point. Like, animals don't really have the capacity to think ahead and learn from mistakes. Really, not in the same way that we can. And so, the situation you just described is there's a potential attacker in your house, and then from that circumstances, you adjusted behavior and now are making it less likely that that happens again. But that makes us hard to kill, is the ability to learn and adapt, and that's why we're the dominant species on the planet now. But that's still in our DNA, that past of extreme violence in nature. Nature is metal. It is
Right.
pretty violent, and it's animals don't really die of old age. It's they get
No.
eaten
No.
at some point,
Yeah.
and so understanding that was in the grand scheme of things not too far, not too long ago in our own history, and now we've been able to kind of move past the savannah and the jungle, and are now living in buildings. But that's still kind of ingrained in us to be able to learn from dangerous situations and then avoid them in the future.
One of the things that you pointed out right there that I want to poke at too is like, I see it with my daughter. She, I she's glued at the hip to me. Like, daddy is
Yeah, yeah,
safety, mommy's fun,
yeah.
daddy's safety, and that was partially
Right.
because when early on, when my wife and I had to make some choices about who was gonna stay with our daughter more, because my wife was going back to her career as a media professional, and my work allowed me to work from home, so I was the one that was with my kiddo more. And so
Right.
she kind of developed that attachment to me. Now it's tricky, she wants to follow me everywhere, and
Right.
I look at it. She's 6. She's almost about to turn 7, and she's still very clingy. And I'm like, you know what, kid, you got to be strong. You got to be. And I'm thinking like trying to teach her traits to be confident in this big world, but then at the
Sure.
same time, I have to remind myself that she's operating from a brain that is still primed for the savannah, still primed.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
why are all of us scared of the dark when we grow up? Because there are
Right.
dangerous things that lurk in the dark. Have you ever watched the TV show 1923? It's the new
No.
offshoot of Yellowstone that
Yellows.
filmed in
Okay, I've heard of it.
1923. It's
Yeah.
got Harrison Ford.
Oh, cool.
But there's one scene where one of the guys is a big game hunter. Not big game
Mm.
hunter. He's like he was a hunter in Africa in the like 1920s, right?
Mhm.
But it was people that were employed by the trains and by the railroads and by, corporations to kind of deal with problem animals,
Mhm.
because at that time there was the famous story of these two man-eating lions that
Oh yeah,
terrorized. They made a movie about it.
yeah. The Ghost
The
in the
Lions
Darkness.
of something. Ghost in
Yeah,
the Darkness, right?
yeah. The Lines
And
of
this
Savo. That's
guy
what it was
was
about.
a yeah, the lions. That's it, right? Those things were killing tons of people. They killed an
Hmm.
insane amount. And like, at night comes and these animals go to work. And so for
Right.
my daughter, I just had to sit there and step back and go, okay, well, what are the things I can teach her? I teach her a couple things. One, daddy's room is safe.
Hmm.
This is a safe room. Like, I make sure that this room is safe. And if you come in here, you can feel safe. But she should still check her surroundings. And one of the things that I'm going to be starting out next week is, again, getting her into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu,
Yeah,
taking
yeah.
her out to the class once a week. Why? Because, we got to teach our kids to be hard to kill too.
Hmm.
And so
Yep.
that's something that's interesting. Now, here's my question for you. What are some of the characteristics or traits that you think would make a person hard to kill?
Yeah. Kind of like I mentioned before, being able to learn from situations, learn from previous circumstances in order to better adapt for future potential threats. That's one. I think having a um, firm grasp on what situational awareness is and then how to appropriately use it is another one for sure. So there are so many people that are just kind of walking through life and just completely oblivious to
Yeah,
everything that's
right?
around them. And, uh, and for a long time, I've chilled out a little bit. But for a long time, I hated going out in public. Not because like I had PTSD or anything like that, but I was always just assuming something bad would happen. It never did,
Hmm.
but having that kind of constantly going through my head, it was exhausting. And so by the end of the night, I was just I was ready for bed just because I was so exhausted from anticipating potential threats that weren't ever there. But
Hmm.
um, I I think it's my approach to it has changed slightly in that um, it's become less exhausting. I still kind of think the same way, but I understand that the mind can't differentiate between visualization and actual physical practice. And so now
Hmm.
I view that as just like a mental exercise. Like, all right, if this happens, how would I respond? As opposed to just assuming that something bad would happen. And it is maintained my level of situational awareness when I'm out, but it has made it less exhausting. Instead of seeing a
I,
threat everywhere, it's just more of like a thought experiment, if that makes sense.
and I
Yeah.
think that I love situational awareness because the whole concept of that is to simply, and this is something I'm trying to teach my kiddo, to, like, to you walk into a room,
Mm-hmm.
take a look, take a look around the room, what's going on. And it
Right.
can be something like, as simple as, where are you sitting on the plane? Like,
Right.
the
Right.
idea of, like, you get onto an airplane and, like, what we don't realize is that whole safety check is a situational awareness check. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
can you look around and see where the exits are at on the airplane? Hopefully you don't have to use them in emergency, but where are they at? Yeah, and
Yeah.
this is, in trying to pay attention to, I always will keep my important documents close by me.
Mm-hmm.
Passports and things I will have on a bag. I don't set it on the floor. Kind of hold on to it,
Yeah.
or I set it to my side.
Yep.
Just, again, to be aware of those things. And I think that, different cultures promote situational awareness in different ways
Mm.
as well. Because sometimes I think one of the things that's interesting about living in Southeast Asia is the motorcycle culture.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you're going everywhere on a bike. And one of the things that I commented to my wife of that is really special to me is that when you ride a motorcycle, you are open to the elements. You are open to the
Mm-hmm.
rain. You are open to the sun. You are open to the smells. It's not all negative. It's wonderful. I mean, it's like
Sure.
one of the things that I cannot describe when people go, "What's it like living in Ho Chi Minh City, in Saigon, in Vietnam?" And I was like, the smell of every last restaurant you drive past is amazing. It is overwhelming to the senses, right? But you have to pay attention to everything when you drive.
Yeah.
You have to be aware of everything, because you literally do not know what direction a motorcycle will come from in the next second.
Right.
You have to just be constantly scanning. And yet, there are people driving down the street on a motorcycle just like this. It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It is pretty nuts, and that would stress me out if I saw people texting while riding a motorcycle.
Oh, dude. But it's one of the things too, coming back to that analogy, is like, I think this is a disadvantage of our cars. This is a disadvantage of our cars in the West.
Yeah.
Because you get in your car, people turn on the radio, they got everything's insulated. People feel so protected from everything that I feel like, and we then get into our house and we feel protected. We forget that the world can be a dangerous place.
Yeah, exactly. I was actually just about to bring that up. Is there's a big difference from when I'm driving my truck to when I'm riding my motorcycle in regards to how I operate. So, and even nowadays, some motorcycle helmets you can like hook Bluetooth up to and listen to the radio, but I typically don't, and primarily because I'm trying to be pretty hyper aware of what's going on. I'm a safe rider, but I can't control everybody else on the road, and so trying to anticipate other drivers, whether or not they can see me, particularly at night. Some potholes in the road I have to be aware of. A pothole on two wheels is way different than on four wheels, right? And so it's there's a huge difference between riding and being exposed to everything versus in the car. In the car, I'm on autopilot. I put on an audio book, and then I look up and I'm like, oh, I'm at my destination. So a motorcycle is way different. I know pretty much every rock and pothole on the way.
Totally, man. And I mean, we're getting even into such an automated world that with these people have these self-driving cars, that it's even a further removal about what's going on around them.
Sure. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, and I've seen you've probably seen TikToks or YouTubes of people in the driver's seat of their self-driving car just passed out and fall asleep,
right?
Which is interesting because the car's doing the work, but I understood the autopilot feature of those cars, right. But it's similar to like autopilot in airplane, that you still have to be in control. It's just doing most of the work, but you still have to be the reasoning mind behind the action and ensure that the machine is operating appropriately. So when people are asleep at the wheel, it's a little freaky.
I agree. There was a flight that was just flying out from Hawaii to San Francisco, and it was climbing up, taking off from Maui, climbed up to 2,000 feet, and then suddenly plunged to 700 feet.
Oh, wow.
And they were like, what's going on? And essentially what they think happened was that the autopilot was set wrong. So instead of setting the autopilot at 20,000 feet, it was set at, it was a pilot error. And seemingly, I'm not 100% sure, but this is what the article said, seemingly a pilot error. If they turn the autopilot on at ground level and didn't set things correctly, it will keep ground level at the base elevation, and that's not a good thing.
That's not a good thing at all.
Maui elevation is not good. When you're the airport elevation is not what you were the plane to be at.
Exactly.
And so the pilots were in control and immediately addressed the situation. It was quick and fast, but they went quickly, turned everything off, and regained control, turned off the autopilot.
Yeah.
But they had to be prepared, and they go through checklists and go through all these different things to kind of have that preparedness for whatever might come.
Absolutely.
That's flight training is.
Right.
Half of it is,
Yeah.
getting ready for things to go south.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, here's an interesting thing. I went and I'm utilizing Chat GPT to kind of drum up some ideas, and I came up. I found some tips for. It listed them as survival tips,
Okay.
but tips to be hard to kill. Read them off here. Number 1, stay physically fit. Number 2, learn self-defense. Number 3, stay alert. And that they separate staying alert from situational awareness, which I thought was kind of interesting. So 3 is staying alert.
Okay.
4 is situational awareness. 5, stay prepared. 6, develop mental toughness. And 7, seek professional training. That could be something like taking a first aid class,
Sure.
or emergency response, or martial arts class, whatever it might be for you. But let's dive into those. Staying physically fit. Why do you think that's important for being hard to kill?
Yeah, twofold. As I kind of mentioned before, and how it's shaped the direction of my goals and kind of the identity that I'm striving to. Being physically fit is really just a testament of your daily habits and daily actions, and it's one of those things you can't really cheat. So if you are in shape and of good health, it's not something you could cram into like a weekend to make happen, right?
Right.
So how does that translate to hard to kill though? I'm not sure that there's a single study out there that would say being unhealthy will make you live longer, right? So overall, being healthy and fueling your body with appropriate food. Again, going back to our savanna analogy, we are meant to be out in the wilderness, and we're not meant to sit at a desk and play on our phone all day. We're designed to move, and the more we can move, the more we're getting back to that I don't know, our natural state. And so being able to move in a healthy way and practicing that is important, and it's important to maintain that health and that health span. So being physically fit makes you hard to kill because you're not killing yourself with stagnation or junk food, if that kind of makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
There was this great video, this great thing I saw on the internet. There's some gems out there sometimes, right? And it was this quiz. And it was one of these little quizzes. And it was a quiz that how long would you last in the zombie apocalypse? And I was like, oh, that's fascinating, right?
Yeah,
and then you went through the quiz to think about how long would you last. Because like there's this new show coming out of Korea called like Physical 100 or 100 Physical.
Okay.
And it's essentially all of these like really strong people from all walks of life, special forces, Olympic athletes, weightlifters, all competing against each other to see who's the strongest and toughest. And it was interesting because I'm loving all the reactions on Instagram and TikTok because all these people were like, yeah, dude, eating, potato chips. Like, oh man, these guys, they're doing it wrong. If I was on there, I would show those guys what's up.
Yeah.
And we all think that we're going to be the guy that lasts forever, but the reality is you might not be, and like you might get to the zombie apocalypse and suddenly you got eaten because you did. There was the Zombie Land, the zombie comedy back. And he's like, one of the first rules was practice your cardio because cardio outrun the zombies is an important thing,
Absolutely.
And so that's
it's 100. It's 100%. I actually play this game with my kids sometimes. Is all right. The zombie apocalypse shows up. What things are you grabbing from the house, or what things you want to store up? Would you hunker down? Would you go somewhere? Would you go live in the woods? And it's for them, it's just funny. To me, it's almost practical because it's like I don't think zombies would show up, but if they did.
Now I talked to my daughter about this for the zombie apocalypse, and I was like, oh yeah, dude, I think about this, and I would think about where I would go, where I'm living. I would go to the boats. I would go onto the water. I'd find a way to the rivers.
Yeah.
Zombies can't swim.
That's true. That's true. I was gonna say I've always liked the zombie apocalypse movies and scenarios, less about the zombies and more about what happens to society and people in general when that happens, because
Yeah.
it's really like a breakdown of society, and it becomes Lord of the Flies,
Yep.
and you have to establish your
Yep.
tribe, and then it's always us versus them. I mean, if you look at any of the zombie movies or any in the genre, it always becomes an us versus them scenario. So it thrusts people that are, you know, blue or white collar office workers, and then it thrusts them back onto the savannas. Everything's a danger, and if you can't trust the tribe that's around you, then you'll die. And that's the part that I like about
Right.
the zombie apocalypse scenarios, because I think
I
the zombies have always, unless they're fast moving zombies, they're like the lesser of the threat. The real threat is somebody
right.
that's bent on, bent on violence, but it's backed by a reasoning mind, something that can think. That's the dangerous part, and that's the dangerous animal that you have to fend against, I think.
Totally. And I think that and I think that we're it's so interesting because I think that that again comes back to the idea of that list is really good, right? But
Mm-hmm.
what comes down to is this idea of how you view yourself interacting with the world.
Yeah,
Are you a a force that is acting upon the world around you, or are you constantly reacting? If you are
right.
exercising and getting physically fit, you are better able to exert your will on the world around you. If you
Yeah,
learn self defense, you are not going to be as defenseless in any type of
exactly.
given situation. If you
Mm-hmm.
stay alert, you are paying attention to things that might be dangerous. And I think that, all of those different types of things are, do you have a proactive approach to the world around you?
Yeah,
Are you taking the position of, I am a force in this world and I can exert my will on the world around me instead of simply having the chaos thrown onto it. And I think that was the beauty of what humankind started to do. We
yeah.
were not an apex predator. Let's be
Right,
real.
right.
Lions were probably eating us pretty regularly on the savannah.
Yeah,
You look at zebras, a
exactly.
beautiful, powerful animal, and they get feasted upon across
Mm-hmm.
the large grasslands of Africa,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a powerful animal. If people haven't realized, you see zebras getting taken down like lions, and we're like, oh wow, that's interesting. Those are massive horses.
Exactly.
And there was this one video I watched of these three weightlifters that were playing tug of war against one lioness
Right, right.
at this zoo.
I've seen that as well. They can't keep
She
up.
just they
Yeah,
can't keep up, and they were
yeah,
just, and it was like not even the top lion, it was just one lioness, and
yeah, yeah.
just absolutely massive beast, and like a pride of lions. The idea of being able to of humankind being able to utilize fire,
Mm-hmm.
being able to create weapons out of sticks, out of rocks. It's amazing. And it was essentially the idea of, we are able to react to the world around us. And
Mm-hmm.
now maybe we don't need to go hunting every day. Maybe we
Right.
don't have to worry about the end of the world at that moment, but we still deal with traumatic situations. We still
Sure.
deal
Yeah.
with a world of uncertainty. And then
Mm-hmm.
maybe you're in the office workplace and you're dealing with office politics. And you
Mm-hmm.
still need to stay alert. You still need to practice situational awareness in this
Sure.
setting that is the modern day, battlefield.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you mentioned it. We are not apex predators, but the reason we are now the dominant species on the planet is because we can use our mind. And
Yep.
the fact that back in the day when we were on the savannah, the exchange of ideas helped advance our species. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
think animals can really exchange ideas to learn from each other's I don't know, experiences or whatever. Not in the same way that we can. If you tell me a story about something that happened to you, I wasn't there. I never saw it, but I can learn something from it. And now both of us are smarter.
Yes.
And I never even had to go through the experience. And I think that's what has kind of set us apart. And so, all right. So what's the point of that? I think more of us need to exercise our minds on a more regular basis.
Yes.
Because if it's the only thing that's really set us apart from the rest of the animal kingdom. Unfortunately, due to some very addicting handheld computers, it's
Right.
we don't find it necessary to exercise our mind in the same way because we can get our dopamine fix just scrolling or whatever, getting likes on videos or however you want to look at it. It's so vital. If you want to be the kind of person that acts as opposed to reacts, you have to exercise your mind. That's what has set us apart,
Yep.
I think.
And I think we become what we focus on.
Mm-hmm.
My wife was talking to me today, and she was like, my memory is getting so bad. I'm having a hard time remembering lyrics. I'm having a hard time. And I said, get off of your screen.
Right.
You just it's like you're watching a ton of Netflix right now. And I'm not hating on her. People, pass their time how they pass their time. But I said, get out and practice. Go down and sing karaoke. Go down and practice singing. Go down and put your energy into these things that promote memory, promote retention, and I think that if you want to be hard to kill, focus on the things and the skills that will make you hard to kill. Maybe, and I think that's going to be different for each person,
Sure.
If you are a fisherman fishing on the high seas, then you really should be, probably, I would say if it was me, maybe practicing the skills that are applicable to that job.
Right.
Maybe practicing swimming, maybe, going out and doing some laps in the pool if you're able to, versus
for sure
the guy who is working as a firefighter is going to need to have a different set of skills. You probably should be practicing. At least I know the guys that I knew that were firefighters, when they would train, they would practice getting in their gear and hauling 100-pound bag up and down some stairs. That was their training, and they would put on the whole uniform and do it in extreme heat, a 90-degree day outside. And they're like, oh, it's time to practice. I was like, why are you doing that? They're like, because it's hard to simulate the heat of a fire. So I wait for, we get hot days, I throw this stuff on. And it's interesting that I think that it's really personalized, but I think that people need to sit down and, like you say, exercise their mind and put together a list of what is applicable to you. What are the skills that you need to be developing? I was thinking for me, I don't need to be, I was watching that Fit 100 and I was like, man, I'd love to do this and this and this. I'd love to be back doing all these things. I'd love to be, I'd love to be huge. But I was like, hang on, no, I'm 44. I've got a family that's got different health challenges in the past. My dad's side of the family has heart disease and things like that. So one of the things I do is I eat extremely low fat. Mm-hmm. And, I try to stick to and it's just for me, I eat vegetarian just because my family's got that history, and I love meat of all types, but, there is scientific correlation for people with heart disease to eating less red meats. And God knows I'd love a steak every day. But that's something that makes me a little bit more hard to kill, Also I try to keep my cardio up, hopping on my rowing machine and my exit and my elliptical and my spinning bike are some things that are really important for me because it just have to keep my ticker strong,
Exactly.
And maybe I won't be the most, muscular guy or the bulkiest guy, but I also know that yoga helps me out and it helps me keep my stress levels down. And I think that's what I'm pointing out is like your being hard to kill could be unique to you. It could be going out. Did I ever tell you about my conversation with Dr. Jim Polsky? He is the world's leader on stress.
Oh, really?
Okay. And so I went to came to my school and he started telling us these horror stories about how they induce stress in baboons. The baboons all got heart disease and cancer.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like, oh man, like these things were all just like Yeah, it was crazy, man. They started getting all of our conditions that we deal with
Wow.
and that
Wow.
they don't normally deal with.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, really depressed. And everyone in the audience is depressed because everyone's thinking like, oh my God, we're stressed. We're all doomed. And finally I raised my hand and everyone's looking at me like, dude, put your hand down. I was like, I'm not asking a question. I came to this thing. I want to find out if we're all just doomed to have these horrible lives or whether there's something we can do about it. I said, can we change it? Do we have to accept this fate? And he looked at us. He's like, no, do not have to. What they found was when they removed stress from the animals, heart disease went away. Cancer went into remission.
Yeah.
These bodies started to heal themselves. And so I was like, on that time, I was big into my yoga kick. And I was like, yeah, yoga is the way. And so I put my hand up. It's like, is yoga the way? He's like, no. Maybe. No. And so what do you mean? He's like, you take one guy from Georgia who's worked at a factory his whole life, and you put him into yoga class, and that yoga class is going to kill him. Because it's
more
not
stressful.
the thing that relaxes that guy. It's more stressful. You take him out and you take him fly fishing because that's the thing that he grew up with. That is the thing that is his thing. And you take him fly fishing and he's going to live to be 95.
Right.
Because to each person, there's a different type of relaxation and stress that works for you. It doesn't fit for everyone. There's not one size fits all.
Sure.
And I'm fascinated by that.
That actually makes a lot of sense. And I like that idea that there's different. It doesn't have to be yoga. It doesn't have to be. Maybe it doesn't have to be meditation. Maybe it is just going for that walk in the woods, or maybe it's hitting the gym. And maybe for me for a long time, lifting weights was how I relaxed. Is maybe as strange as that is, but I always called it cheap therapy because it was just like I got to be present in the moment, or that weight will squish me. So yeah, I like that a lot actually. And before that, you were talking about being proactive and hard to kill is different in different circumstances. It reminded me of this time. This is back when I was still in the Army. I went to a team party with the guys on my team, and I was looking around, and I'm in pretty good shape, and I wouldn't consider myself weak, although my 8-year-old calls me weak all the time. but I was looking around, and there was 2 guys on my team. One of them was a collegiate wrestler, so he had like no neck and the cauliflower ear, and he's a big teddy bear. He's nice as anybody I've ever met, but if he wanted to, he could rip my arms off and beat me to death with them. And that was one guy. And then I looked over, and there's another guy who's about 6'4", 260 pounds, which makes him a behemoth. Like, he's a big guy, but he was a purple belt in jiu-jitsu and also trained Muay Thai. And so not only is he strong, but he has like the skills to back it up too. And I was looking at these 2 guys, and I realized if they wanted to, they can enact violence on me, and there was nothing I could do about it. Like, literally nothing. And I'm 6 foot tall, like 190 pounds. I'm not a small guy, but there would be nothing I could do. And I got personally offended. I was like, what am I doing with my life? This is unacceptable. I refuse to accept this. And that moment was actually what started my martial arts journey. And now I'm doing jiu-jitsu, and I love it. And it has actually become my stress reliever. And this hasn't been intentional, but I haven't lifted a weight since I started jiu-jitsu back in December. And I'm going to start incorporating it back into my workout program. So I'll essentially be doing 2-a-days, but it was interesting how I went from like lifting heavy things, and that was my therapy, to now it's getting choked out by strangers, and that's my therapy now.
Right.
But yeah, like that stress reliever is kind of different for everybody. But I think being proactive and trying to find the things that will make you more difficult to kill are important. And that particular story was kind of the beginning of part of my journey in that.
I love that, man. Well, there was a story that popped up this week about a Russian doctor, Dr. Leonid Rogozov. I think I sent it over to you because it just popped in my head. And like, one of the things that I've always admired people who are tough as hell. And I'm not always, oh, I got a splinter. I need to take a break. I mean, not
Right.
that bad, but Dr. Rogozov was based out of Antarctica. And, this was in the 60s, and it was, you know, much more rough at that time than I've seen some of the stuff, and I'm not saying that the scientists have it easy in Antarctica. Far from it. It's brutal now still.
Right.
But I mean, in the 60s, it was probably quite a bit more brutal, and there was less permanent, like established bases there that they were working out of. And so this guy was stationed there in Antarctica with a team of 12 scientists and researchers. He was the only doctor, one guy.
Yeah.
And he had a health crisis. He started feeling the symptoms of having an acute appendicitis. And acute appendicitis is an extremely dangerous condition because if it ruptures and spills all that bacteria into the abdominal cavity, you're going to get sepsis and most likely pass. So still, the treatment for acute appendicitis is to pull that bad boy out. He was the only doctor. Right. And the only time they could have gotten him in the amount of time, you can't pull people out of Antarctica quickly. That's right. Not an easy thing to do. So he had the choice, either essentially die or remove his own appendix. So he set up the mirrors. He had some people helping him. He sterilized everything himself. He gave himself local anesthesia. And he took his appendix out. 2 hours.
That's insane.
2 hours.
Yeah.
It's nuts, man. And it's like, we often think of being hard to kill as of, the Seagal type stuff. And yet sometimes it is all about not giving in, not relenting, even in the face of the most huge level of adversity. Because we might not be facing bears in our lives, but we might be facing financial uncertainty. We might be facing a spiritual crisis, a mental crisis, a job crisis, a period where maybe you get laid off and you haven't been able to find something new. Maybe you are dealing with, you drink too much and you realize you need to stop. Maybe you are facing a different type of darkness. And I think that the being hard to kill, I want to come back to this, to me, still means there's an idea of whatever it is that you're facing, whatever that bear is in your life, that lion, that tiger, is something that you're standing up to. Because I don't think, besides, I haven't had anyone try to hunt me lately, thank God. But I have had a ton of other stuff that I've had to face off against that was terrifying.
Sure.
In one way, shape, or form. So,
yeah,
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to visit the doctor again. It's fascinating. So I was one of the medics on my team. So I got to do like hospital rotations and I sit in on some surgeries and stuff. Never an appendicitis, but I got to help out with like some C-sections and stuff like that. And it's super interesting. Medicine in general is super interesting. And I think it's super interesting primarily because the body wants to heal. It wants to be healthy. And so if you just help it, it'll do it. So the fact that this doctor was able to set up the mirrors and give himself an anesthetic and perform the operation on himself is phenomenal. But I like to cling to the fact that he had the expertise too. He knew what to do. He knew the signs and symptoms of appendicitis, and then he knew the next step. So really, I try to picture myself. What would I do in that situation, and or put myself in his place? And it's like, all right, I have two options. I can try to do this, or I can die. Okay, so I'll try to do this. And the fact that he was a surgeon and knew what to do was even better. I don't know. It's just, to me, that's just phenomenal. But it came down to him having the knowledge and the expertise prior to, in order to be able to help him through that. While you were talking about this doctor, it reminded me, and the name escapes me, but the the guy that was hiking and the boulder fell on his arm, and then he was trapped for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, the 128-hour.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, he wound up having to amputate his own arm with a pocket knife. And so it's kind of different end of the spectrum. It's no anesthetic. He's not a doctor. He's just some adventurer, but still, it's that it came down to he had a choice. It's like, all right, I do this or I die. How bad do I want to live? Well, pretty bad. So let's do this. And he cut off his own arm. I think that's part of the formula too, is hard to kill has to be coupled with an extreme desire to live. And
yes,
not give up, and as showcased by the doctor and the guy that cut off his arm, and all of our ancestors on the savannah, they don't want to be eaten by lions, and so they share their experiences and they share their tips and tricks on how to keep the wildlife and monsters at bay, and that's what has progressed us forward, because they want to survive, they want to live. That's kind of my thought.
I had a time period before I moved back to Southeast Asia that I had some health challenges. It was kind of the dark night of my soul type of a situation, Everything in my life changed the day I had my daughter. The day I looked down at that little face and I said, oh shit, I got a lot to live for now.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm not a perfect dad. Maybe there are ways that I can be better, but I sure try.
Yeah.
And I try my hardest. And I think that one of the important things is like, whatever it is for you. And when I was really sick, do you know what kept me going? My puppy, my dog. Because I would I need to get up and I got to go up the street and feed my dog because she was staying with my brother's friend. Got there. And it was tough, man. It was tough getting up, and I was just dealing with just really challenging symptoms. And yet that was the thing that kept me going. And I think that, like you said, being hard to kill is also about what are you living for?
Mm-hmm.
My dad is a perfect example. My dad and I, we don't talk a lot. I love him, but one of the reasons it's so hard for me to connect with my dad is he lives his life with a purpose. And his purpose is helping people. He is always out doing things. He's almost 80 and he's just going, right now, Jimmy Carter, they said, is on hospice. He's 98 or something. And what a great human being. Think about his presidency, what you will, but that man,
right,
just I remember once he had a brain tumor and then he fell down off of his thing. And the next day he was back at Habitat for Humanity building houses. And I was just
exactly. Yeah.
Because he had a purpose.
Exactly.
They have a purpose. They have something that's bigger than them. And I think that's so important. What is it that you believe in?
Right.
That is your purpose.
Yeah. And I think that's another great thing that sets us apart from the rest of the animal kingdom is animals that my understanding is their purpose is to grow old enough to reproduce and then continue the species, which is fine for the animal kingdom. But yeah, we have an opportunity to really try to make the world itself better, or the community that we live in better, or our families better, or our significant other better, make their lives better and their existence better just from our actions and our thoughts and our words. And so, yeah, that purpose is huge, and it's not something that should be, I don't know, thought of as nonchalant. It could really be impactful if you want it to be, but that requires you actually taking time to figure out what your purpose is, or discovering your purpose. And a lot of the folks I work with struggle with that because I'm not sure if they're scared of the question because it's kind of a big question, or maybe they're scared of picking the wrong purpose, or thinking that their purpose is the wrong purpose. But ultimately, it's such a vital part of our existence because it's one of the things that sets us apart. And being able to define that story or that thing that is bigger than us and diving into it and giving ourselves to it to make things better is a phenomenal thing and shouldn't be wasted, I don't think.
I was starting to think about why I was doing like this podcast, even why I do conversations, even. And I got back to that question of like, I suddenly clicked for me. And I was like, I'm doing this so that I can have something my daughter can watch someday. And hopefully enjoy and hopefully go, wow, oh, that was interesting what dad said right there.
Yeah.
Oh, that was interesting. The conversation they had. Because if we can make one person's life better,
Right.
With a butterfly effect, it can change the world.
Yeah.
And I think that it comes back to, being better every day that we talked about before. Being hard to kill, I think, is just an extension of that. Staying alive to enact your purpose, staying alive to be not just better for yourself, but like moving beyond the self to making the world better.
Right. Right. Yeah, I totally agree.
That's awesome. What are some skills that you want to continue to hone to be harder to kill?
I think if I had to boil it down, it would be physical fitness, and I think that should be almost foundational, because once you're as you know, like once your health starts to go down, that's all you focus on, and nothing else matters,
Yep.
and it becomes all consuming. So if you can stave off disease and keep the chaos of sickness at bay, you are able to dive into that greater purpose to a greater degree, I think. So foundational, I think physical fitness, being healthy, increasing your health span is important. I think on top of that, it would be fine tuning your mental acuity, developing the skills you have mentally to make your mind stronger, whether that's resilience or learning new skills, or I don't know, something that exercises your mind, I think is super important. And I think that would be the next step. And then if I could only pick three, I think my third one would probably be uh, some kind of emotional awareness, to the point where like you are able to feel all of your emotions. I think that's incredibly important. Feel what you feel, but control it. Don't let it dictate how you govern your life. For example, the doctor that had appendicitis, I bet he was a little stressed out
Yeah.
and emotional about the whole situation. That's fine. Feel those emotions, maybe even save them for later, feel them afterwards. But ultimately, it's the reasoning mind that has to work through the chaos. So I think it's important, again, to feel your emotions, acknowledge them, but don't let them dictate your direction, um, and keep them in check when necessary. I think those
I
would be
like
my
that a
three
lot, man.
if I had to pick three.
I think that's solid. And I think that I like that. I think that keeping your mind in check, so that your emotions in check, they can be there. Not downplaying them. It's good to
Right.
feel what you feel. But are they helping the situation?
Right.
My daughter spilled some salt all over the floor earlier today. And she's like, I don't know if it was me or mommy or who. I was like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Well, are you going to get angry? No one's getting angry. Let's focus on the solution.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help me go get the dustpan? Okay, cool. Well, Daddy, but I don't care. Let's focus on cleaning it up. That's all we got to worry about.
Exactly.
Because right at that moment, her worrying and the stress and like, am I going to get in trouble? Didn't help the situation.
Right.
So I was like, it's not a problem. Let's focus on the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy for me to see it when I'm teaching it to her, but for myself, when my problems get more complex, it's harder to keep that same amount of framework. But I believe that the same truth applies.
Yeah.
Can you keep what was it? The If by Rudyard Kipling. Can you keep your heads when all about you are losing theirs?
Yeah.
I love that
Yeah.
line. Absolutely
Absolutely.
love that line.